So welcome everyone to our webinar, Creating a Rails to Trails Network in Central Jersey. Thanks for hopping onto this call today. We're very excited. We have some great speakers from Somerset County Planning, the Rails to Trails Conservancy, and North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority. I'm Sarah Catherine. I'm Communications and Outreach Manager at RideWise. We're a transportation management association located in Somerset County. And I'll be moderating the webinar today. So just some general housekeeping before we get started. If you could keep yourselves muted during the presentation, just out of respect to our speakers, that would be great. We're going to have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, so please hold your questions until the end. You can also put your questions, if you don't want to forget them, into the Q&A or into the chat, but we're not going to answer them until we get to the end of the presentation. To get started, I'm just going to do a very quick introduction over how this webinar came about and who RideWise is. So we're RideWise, like I said, we're a transportation management association in Somerset County, New Jersey. Every county has a TMA. You can actually go to NJTPA's website to find out what TMA is in your region. And we're a nonprofit that promotes and advocates for safe and sustainable transportation. So that's everything from walking and biking, using public transit, electric vehicles, and we work with a variety of audiences from schools, municipalities, businesses, individual people, and things like that. So this webinar came about because while working with our municipal partners, we had a couple municipalities who were interested in learning about Rails to Trails and how to connect the trails in their community to make more networks for people to walk and bike, whether that be for recreation, for transportation, an alternative to driving a car, or just connecting different tourism opportunities and connecting communities. So, I reached out to our speakers and we started working on this webinar, and we ended up deciding to grow it to include the whole Central Jersey region because there's a lot of great work being done. And when we all partner together is when we can, advance active and safe and sustainable transportation throughout all of New Jersey. So that's the focus of this webinar today. So thank you for joining. And to get started, we're going to start with Tom Sexton from Rails to Trails Conservancy. So go ahead, Tom.
Hello, everyone. And thank you for having me, Sarah. I'm looking forward to the discussion. That's where you can reach me. I'll put that up at the end again, my email, and we can either talk through later on with a phone call or however is best. But I wanted to share with you some of the resources and tools that the Rails to Trails Conservancy has. Next. And just quickly, that is our mission. Pretty straightforward. Whoops. Pretty straightforward. And of course, probably many of you have been on Somerset County's Bedminster hike and bikeway. Not a rail trail, but nevertheless, a good example of a multi-purpose trail that we need more of. Next. If you don't know the Conservancy, this is our 38th year. We have three main pots of assistance. The first one is technical assistance. That's what we're doing now. Sometimes we're out in the field, but most of all, it's assisting people, as you'll see very soon, through our 50 staff that are spread around the United States. Most of those are in our headquarters office in Washington, D.C. Also, you might have used our Trail Link resource. That's our trail finder. It has over 41,000 miles of multi-purpose trails over 26,000 miles of that is rail trail. And then lastly, we're not known for this as much, but it's sort of what makes everything go, and that is working on on policy and for the programs to occur that build trails, and also getting the big money. And the feds, especially, and some states have quite a lot of funding to build trails at this point. And so we want to capture that as soon as we can. Next. There are hundreds, several hundred rail trail projects around the state, and no open rail trail really ever ends. There's reasons to build out on both ends and make connections even in between. So it's hard sometimes to say this is a project because we're always building more. Oh, go back. Yeah. And but we have focused in, and that's really strategically needed, in 10 Trail Nation projects, plus a lot of other networks that we're working on. Even though we're 50 people, not all of those are in the trail development department within the Trails Conservancy. So we have to be strategic about where we spend our time. Next. Those 150 networks and what we have learned in the last 38 years is compiled in our workbook that I'll show you very soon. But we have, again, to focus strategically, we work in about 6 phases, and we call that our Trail Nation playbook. Some of these have to occur at the same time, some before others. It's not, of course, a straight line, but usually begins with coalition building. That coalition may create a vision or fine-tune a vision. Through that, they may need some mapping and analytics. And then even before some of this, sometimes you have to get money to run the engine. That may be a local effort or a regional effort, and that takes staff. Although I work quite a lot with volunteers and some basically paid professionals, unpaid professionals, excuse me, but really a joy to work with. Next. I'll leave this on for a second. If you haven't heard of this, this is a great peer learning community, and please take a picture of that. We'd love to have you join so we can get you the needed information ASAP. Next. As you know, and our other speakers will be talking about this more, when we connect trails, we get a lot more use of the corridor. Preliminary findings, 40 to 80% even. So connectivity really matters, and that's what we're talking about today in terms of building networks. Next. One initiative that's very exciting that's just been launched is the and it's really Northeast Jersey Trail Network. But the North Jersey Trail Network initiative is an attempt to create a vision of corridors that are important in the 6 counties in Northeast New Jersey, and then focus in even more to prioritize those and put resources behind those. So we were able to secure funding to staff 2 positions for those 6 counties. And our partner in this is the New Jersey Bike Walk Coalition. and they actually have hired their person, but they'll be putting that news out later. Our position is still open, so if anybody is interested in that, you can go to our career page on our website and find out more. What you're seeing there is just a general picture of what we know out there. Some of those trails you will know without even being labeled, and others are projects. This is not the definitive set of trails we're going to be working on, but this is where we're going to start to look at. So very, very exciting. We hope that we'll be able to work in other counties in time if we get more assistance, and this will help lead to having a statewide trails plan with a vision and prioritized corridors, which we don't have at this point. Next. All right, so let's get into the resources and tools. Next. And before we do that, let me just mention there's a lot of elements that go into this. I'm not going to get into a lot of it today. Some of these really aren't captured in our website, even to a basic amount. But these are some of the other ways that you can become successful with rail trails. Of course, it's very important if right off the top you have a governor who likes to hike, likes to bicycle, is really supportive of trails. It goes so long, and also having state generated funding, money, not funding coming from the federal government that's relabeled, but funding that comes from New Jersey. And then also, as I said before, have a plan with priority segments, so you know where you want to put that money. Next. Next. And if you're feeling like you're up a tree and don't know where to go, we're going to help you today. Next. So I've really broken down the specific elements of our toolbox so I could share them with you rather than go live, because that's sometimes cumbersome. But you will find everything you need to, almost everything you need to have to build a rail trail. The basics are there. There's also, you can see, also you can see rails with trails. That's a type of rail trail where the two facilities are side by side. We have trails and utilities. I'm the lead for the Conservancy in working with utilities. So if people have questions on that, that's something we could talk about more. And of course, climate resiliency is such an important factor, and that page is growing and growing. We'll start with organizing some of the basics next. Then go into acquisition. The acquisition elements here, not a lot of change. Rail banking, which is a great federal program, has been around for a long time. We have more and more corridors that are rail banked, but the ABCs of that haven't really changed over the years too much. Environmental contaminants, that's something that in the early years, I've been here 34 years. In the early years, there was a lot of misconceptions about all the corridors just having so many nasties that they all had to be capped, et cetera, and that's just not true. Funding, of course, so critical. We have a federal funding tool, and I'll pop that specific tab up a little later, but you can find all the programs and some strategies for getting funding for your initiative there. Next. Planning, so critical. Trail towns, really good resources on that. Developing in sensitive areas. and also working with your regional planning organizations. You're going to hear from Keith today, who's with North Jersey Regional Planning Authority, and they're going to be a collaborator in that initiative that I talked about in Northeast New Jersey, and are so critical for capturing the funding from the Federal Highway Department. Next. Design. Right up top there, surfaces. That's one that's so critical, but often doesn't get enough analysis. Folks often jump to one type of surface or another, or feel that they have to have just one or the other, where a mix is fine. And then some of the other elements, more and more tunnels, which are a very exciting resource. People love to go through tunnels. They love to go over bridges. We're seeing more art along our trails, which is wonderful. Next. I'm also the lead for maintenance for the Conservancy, so that's something we can talk about. But we have a lot of good information about the routine costs of trails, multi-purpose trails, as well as rails to trails, and some of the liability and insurance questions. Recently, we've added, the whole e-bike component. So a lot of good stuff there, and you do see at the bottom the doing surveys and counting, which is so critical. So you can do economic analysis, and you really understand who's using your trail, so you can manage it to fit those needs. Next. But if you do want to find other resources besides the Trails Conservancies, you can go to the library and put in keywords, and there's just a lot of information there for you. Next. Webinars, a great way to share the information and also ask questions. This was one on the right that I did in April with a couple of my colleagues and also Christopher Dallas from the Federal Highway Administration. And there is actually money out there for maintenance, but not real well known. Next. As I mentioned before, here's our federal funding page, and we have it all there.
Hi, Tom, are you still there?
Yep. Next. Okay, great. Also, I mentioned before our Trail Link site, and it's our trail finder, but it's also a great resource for finding comparables to your trail. You can put in keywords like boardwalk or wetland or whatever, and you can find a lot of trails that might have those elements, and then compare and contrast, and maybe reach out to those trail managers to find out, how they did things, and how are those elements holding up, or are they going to continue to do the same thing, et cetera, et cetera. So that again is a picture of your Bedminster Trail. Next. And there's some of the stats that we have under Trail Link. Some of them I mentioned before. There's over 2,400 different rail trails in the United States. Although we're building networks, they're being connected. Some of those names are changing in a bit. and we're creating, you know, hundreds of miles of linked corridors, which is really where you want to get. You can see some of New Jersey's statistics on the bottom of the page there. So please use this resource. Next. If you are a member, you're receiving our trail blogs and our magazine, also really good resource. Next. And again, you can reach out to me and I'll be happy to help you. Next. There's a last shot at our collaborative. So I think you would really enjoy that and get a lot of good information from it. And lastly, I think that's a shot from the Camden waterfront looking at Philadelphia, I believe. But there's my email. Please reach out to me and I'll be happy to try to help you at least. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Tom. That was great. Thank you for sharing all those amazing resources. I apologize for the slides jumping forward. I don't know if a button on my keyboard is stuck or something. So if that happens again, I'll just jump back. Now we're going to move into talking a little bit about Somerset County specifically. Walt and Tom are going to talk about the Somerset County Walk, Bike, and Hike Study and Preservation Plan.
So thanks, Sarah Catherine. I'm Walt Lane. I'm the Director of Planning for Somerset County, and I have with me my colleague, Tom Boccino, who runs our preservation section of the County Planning Division. So if you go to the next slide, we're going to talk about our Walk, Bike, Hike Study and our County Preservation Plan, and how that all fits into how we're trying to promote active lifestyles and addition of trails and greenways and bicycle networks throughout the county. So our mission, this is our mission. I'm not going to read it to you, but our goal for the planning office and the county planning board is to make the county a better place to live, work, play, and learn. So, and using our natural resources and coordinating economic development activities so we can have kind of the best of both worlds in Somerset County. So if you go to the next slide. A lot of our work has been driven by the county master plan, which is an adopted, just like municipalities have master plans, counties do as well. So in 2014, we adopted the master plan element for the county investment framework map. And the goal of this map was to clearly define where preservation should occur in the county and where growth should occur in the county. And this was done in coordination with all of our planning partners from all of our 21 municipalities. Takes into account their local plans, takes into account county plans, as well as state and regional plans. So the idea was by mapping this all out and coming up with this very specific and detailed criteria to identify these growth areas and preservation areas, we can convey a clear message on where growth should occur in the county, where we should be making investments to support growth, and where we should not be making investments where the goal of that for those areas is preservation or limited development. So they range in the place types from the priority growth investment areas. Those are the purple areas on the maps. Those are areas that have all the infrastructure and where towns like to grow for growth and economic development to occur. And then we have our priority preservation investment areas. And those are the dark green and the lighter green on the map, where preservation, where the dark greens, lands already permanently preserved through county, local, state, federal actions, and those can be preserved farms, preserved open space, historic resources, and the lighter green is where we'd like to see preservation occur. So this really informs all the other work of the county's master plan going forward from when this was adopted in April of 2014. So we've updated various elements of the county master plan over those years. And in the meantime, we did some other planning studies, namely the walk, bike, hike study, if you could go to the next slide, which builds off our 2011 circulation element for the county master plan. And the goal of this study, which I have to thank the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority for providing us the grant funding to undertake this work, and also to RideWise, who served on the project steering committee to help us develop this plan. The idea was that we want to develop a low stress, all ages network for people able to walk, bike, or hike throughout Somerset County, and really connecting places and destinations, not only employment opportunities and services like transportation, but also for schools to local parks and county parks and so on, We also really wanted to improve mobility and safety and access. We realize not everyone in the county has a vehicle, or has some households have only one vehicle. So by providing another means to access employment, education opportunities, shopping, those things, how can we create a seamless system building off what the county has and what the county's infrastructure for our parks and greenways and trails and county roads with bike lanes, to the municipal system and the state system, like I said, to create that seamless network for mobility in the county. And we did that. We wanted to make sure this plan was compliant with various guidance documents and other standards. So it's consistent with AASHTO, it's consistent with the state's complete streets policies. And then we also integrated this with the county's preservation plan. And Tom will talk about that in a little while. So if you could go to the next slide. We don't do anything in Somerset County without engaging all our stakeholders. I think we have a very good track record at the county of really involving a wide range of stakeholders in the planning process. I always tell my team, I'm the last thing I want to be is up in front of our Board of County Commissioners or our planning board and tell them we didn't think of something when someone comes to the public from the public meeting or a public hearing or adopting plans. And I want to say we didn't think of that or we missed that group. So when we did the walk, bike, hike study, we did a lot of outreach. So we had a steering committee. I mentioned that was RideWise was on the steering committee, NJ Transit, NJDOT, a whole host of county agencies, groups like AARP of New Jersey. We're all part of that, and we wanted to make sure we captured a wide net and took all kinds of everyone's concerns and their issues into account as we developed the plan. We had focus group meetings, we had community pop-up events where we went to community events, farmers markets, or street fairs to meet people where they're at, not expecting them to come to a county public meeting at the county building. We did work on some communities of concern, so we actually went to one of our planning partners was Literacy Volunteers of America. We actually went to their ESL classes to engage that population when they're in class, so that we got feedback on their needs and they got to practice their English skills with us. We went to 2 of our senior centers to talk about what mobility issues they had and some of their concerns. And we actually met with the Somerset County's youth leadership group to get the future users of our transportation system, their opinions. And it was also, and also for a group of people that do not have access to, but they're not able to drive, the majority of those students that are juniors and sophomores and juniors in high school, to make sure like what things we're missing that would help them get around the county into town. So we had 2 public meetings, and then a lot of the little word cloud on the bottom right is an outline of the county, but those are some of the major themes that we heard during the outreach process about connectivity, safety, mobility, health, equity. We want make sure that the improvements that we're doing are serving the widest range of residents in the county. Sustainability is another, economic vitality, tourism. So we used all that input to identify a series of improvements. So if you go to the next slide, that just gives a little bit of, we had the other outreach efforts. We had an online survey where we had over 1,000 responses. Thank you to RideWise for helping us promote that survey. And also AARP helped us promote it to their members, their AARP members that lived in Somerset County. We had an online mapping tool that allowed residents to go in and put in concerns at specific locations or corridors where they like to see improvements. It can range from like this road needs a bike lane versus this intersection, or this bus stop is missing pedestrian connections to it. We had over 250 written comments through emails. We did a lot of work through press releases and email blasts and Facebook targeted ads to gather this input. And the benefit of these online tools was allow people to do that on their own time. So if they couldn't meet a public meeting or participate in a focus group meeting and those types of things, allowed them to provide their comments and their concerns. We had a project website. So if we go to the next slide, just an example of just a few of the outreach efforts, from our public meetings, where we let people draw on the maps, to out in the field and in various farmers markets or community days to get input. So we really tried to make sure like everyone had a chance to participate. And to me, it just brings out a better planning process, and it also allows the residents to feel engaged and to be heard, but also creates champions at the local level to help advocate for the improvements and the investments that are needed to make the plan a reality. Because planners sometimes have the reputation of doing plans and moving on to the next plan. We really have been trying during my tenure as director here to make these plans actionable so they don't sit on the shelf behind me and collect dust, that they actually move forward. And we worked with the NJTPA has been a great planning partner with us, and they funded some of these planning studies, and there's been numerous projects that come out of that the town's been able to access funds to implement the plans. So if you go to the next slide, this is was when we did the study a few years ago. This was the existing network of the system. You can see, it's the best we could. This represents county facilities and state and local facilities. So we mapped out where there is trails, where there is shared use paths, where there's bike lanes, and that's the existing network. So as I said earlier, the goal was to create a seamless system that kind of ties the different areas of the county together in a seamless system. So you don't know if you're on a county trail or a municipal trail or a state trail, but it all kind of ties together and gives you that ability to move throughout the county. I could get into a lot of the details of we did a lot of technical analysis and identified which through our levels of service for walking and biking, where there's basically pockets of good mobility, but then there's various natural and man-made features that kind of separated those areas. So we looked at how we could cross those areas in a safe and efficient manner to make this a seamless system. So if you go on to the next slide, this is the proposed network. So I think there was roughly like 130 miles of trails and facilities that were in the existing network, and we identified over 270 new miles of improvements that would make this system connection. Now, some of these are county projects, some of these are state projects, some of these are local projects. But the idea is if we could creating this existing and potential network through the walk, bike, hike study is to give some guidance to our towns when they're making some of their local planning decisions, informing county open space acquisitions as well, and tying the system together. So you could see where we can start stitching all this together. And there's a couple of big projects that came out of this effort that Tom is going to get into in a few minutes. But if you go to the next slide, we developed a design guidebook so that any of our planning partners could implement the recommendations that weren't part of the county network. And the idea is this provides some tying in so it looks like a seamless system. So if everyone starts designing their trails in the same manner, similar type of signage treatments and wayfinding signage, it kind of creates that broader system. But it also talks about, I should mention when we talked about the trail network, looking at linking different destinations together, and tourism is part of that as well. So there's some active transportation type of recommendations for mobility, but there's also this is also supports some of the county's economic development goals as well. So if you go to the next slide, the design guidebook also talks about placemaking strategies and creative placemaking strategies to help revitalize these areas. So the idea is that we talked about having creating something similar to the Indianapolis Cultural Trail. If you're not aware of that, in the city of Indianapolis, they did a series of improvements to link together various neighborhoods through greenways and trails and creative placemaking using public art. So we want that as a great strategy that we've incorporated in some of our work. And you'll hear about that a little bit later, but the idea is it's those placemaking strategies and planning strategies and those engineering and design strategies that all wrap into this design guidebook to help other people implement the plan when it's not necessarily a county project or a county facility. So if you go to the next slide, I'll quickly wrap up that there's a collaboration with a lot of partners, citizens groups, state and municipal partners, nonprofits, developers. The idea is that the design guidebook and this framework that this walk, bike, hike study came up with can help inform their decisions. There's over 200 plus recommendations for short, medium, and long-term projects. These efforts and recommendations were embedded into the preservation plan, which you'll hear about in a few minutes. But the idea also ties in before even the county had a climate change policy statement that our commissioners adopted in a couple of years ago. Ideas for how we can reduce vehicle miles traveled to reduce greenhouse gas emission and promote active transportation projects. So which ties into some of the work that Healthier Somerset's doing to improve the health of the county. The walk, bike, hike study kind of gives a framework to make those physical improvements that allow for more active lifestyles and so on, and improve safety and mobility in the county. So that is all for me. I'll turn it over to my colleague, Tom Boccino, to talk about the preservation plan.
Thank you, Walter. Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to kind of elaborate a little bit more on what Walter discussed about how the walk, bike, hike study worked into the preservation plan. So I wanted to give you all a little bit of background on the preservation plan if you don't already know. Somerset County Preservation Plan was adopted in May of 2022, and it's believed to be the first of its kind in New Jersey and possibly the United States as far as combining several programs into one plan. The plan combines into one the updated Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan, which was a 2000 plan, updated the Comprehensive Farmland Preservation Plan, which was last done in 2008, and it creates a new Historic Preservation Plan, all of which provide land use, funding, partnership strategies for preservation in Somerset County. The plan links the three programs and incorporates climate change mitigation, economic development, and tourism strategies. Next, please. So the Somerset County Open Space Preservation Plan is the one element of the overall plan, and it updates the goals and objectives of the 2000 plan. The plan continues the 5 established goals in the prior plan with updated strategies to reflect the changes in preservation and recreational needs. You'll see listed all of the current goals, and in bold, you'll see the 3 new goals. They were incorporated to further support the evolution of open space preservation and park development and to support the increased preservation goal of 24,000 acres, which was updated from 20,000. So the 3 new ones are leveraging the Open Space Trust Fund, preserving historic sites on county-owned land, and cultivating partnerships. Next slide, please. So we're trying to promote walking and bicycling in this plan, and you'll see from the prior slide that one of the goals was to provide county parks where they will most easily serve the greatest population concentrations in Somerset County. So although many of the updated strategies and new goals focus on the enhancement of existing trail networks within the county parks, interconnecting county parks, and connecting to other local parks and pedestrian facilities, this goal really kind of wraps that all up into one. There are 2 key strategies in this goal. The 2000 plan had a goal of ensuring a greenway, trail, park, or natural area within a 10 to 15-minute drive of every residence in Somerset County. The current plan proposes a 10 to 15-minute walk to every park. So we're really trying to encourage preservation everywhere in order to give everybody an opportunity and easy access to any park. And this doesn't necessarily mean it would be a county park. We're just trying to set the groundwork for any park to be accessible. So referencing the walk, bike, hike study, this goal also recommends the development of a cross-county trail network utilizing an abandoned rail bed that includes accessing county parks through multimodal transportation routes and coordination with municipal trail plans. Ideally, these connections would be off-road, but in some cases, there need to be coordination of pedestrian options on sidewalks, bicycling options on public streets and bridges. Next slide, please. So here you will see our cross-county trail concept. The cross-county trail concept proposes a linear on and off-road multi-use paved trail that would utilize an abandoned rail bed to connect the Raritan River Greenway in Raritan Borough to the north, to the South Branch Greenway in the Neshannock section of Branchburg to the southwest. The roughly 7.5-mile trail would create connections between neighborhoods and to key private and public open space and park facilities such as Duke Farms, which is shown in the tan color, and Van Middlesworth Park, which is a local park down to the south, and Mountain View Park, which is a regional scale county park, as well as the Sourland Mountain Preserve, which is our 6,000 acre preserve in Hillsborough, Montgomery. The entire length of the trail is now currently in private ownership. So the acquisition, there's acquisition that's required. Negotiations will be required with multiple property owners, and also we will be coordinating with Duke Farms to hopefully provide access through Duke Farms to get to the Raton River Greenway. So the next slide, please. So just to kind of wrap it all up and to kind of work off of what Walt presented and what I presented, all of these plans really work together, reinforce each other, and that allows us to really work more towards implementing these plans. Also provides more opportunity for funding to fund these plans if they are well documented. So the recommendations of the Walk Bike Hike study have been incorporated into the goals of the open space plan. Now recommendations of those two plans are being incorporated into the updated county circulation plan. Circulation plan entitled Keep Somerset Moving, Transportation Plan 2045 will be adopted as an element of the county master plan by the county planning board in October of 2024, this month. And as evidenced by the common recommendations and goals of these three plans, coordination is essential to the successful creation, and most importantly, the implementation of these plans. Next, please. So thank you all for listening. This is Walter's contact information as well as mine, and the Somerset County website link.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom and Walt. That was a really great information. And if you live in Somerset County and are working on trails there, I highly encourage you to take advantage of these resources to help reach these goals. Now we're going to transition into moving to a bigger scale, looking at New Jersey as a whole through NJTPA's plans and work that they've been doing. So go ahead, Keith.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. My name is Keith Hamus. I'm a principal planner with the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority. And my focus of my work is primarily on safety planning and active transportation. And it's been interesting. There's a lot of increased focus and priority on creating safe and connected networks for people, pedestrians and cyclists too. And this kind of work does take a lot of commitment from a lot of players coming together. So today I'll talk about a few resources that the NJTPA brings to the table. Next slide, please. Before I do that, I just want to quickly talk about the NJTPA, our role, and kind of define that for you. So the NJTPA is a federally authorized metropolitan planning organization for the North Jersey region. I apologize to those who have heard this 1,000 times, but I just want to explain the role here. And one of those primary roles is to help allocate federal funding for transportation improvement projects throughout the region. And that includes efforts ranging from planning studies to projects on the ground. Our board has representation from 13 counties that you see here, including Somerset County with Commissioner Sarah Suey, as well as 2 major cities, Newark and Jersey City. And we also have a handful of state agencies such as NJDOT and NJ Transit. So we're also considered an interagency forum. So that means we bring agencies together and help focus on transportation matters. Next slide, please. All right, so these are just a few of the ways that NJTPA supports active transportation and trails. At a high level, just note that the work leading up to putting projects on the ground could take a very long time, and it takes several different shapes, if you will. Hopefully I can help illustrate a little bit of that in the next few minutes, talking about some of the NJTPA's programs that you see here. And one of those primary roles is to help allocate federal funding for transportation improvement projects throughout the region. And that and other initiatives that focus on bicycle and pedestrian planning. So I'll get into a little more detail. Next slide, please. And firstly, I'm going to start with the active transportation plan. This was completed in 2023. And this is a regional plan. It outlines a common vision for how biking and walking facilities should connect across the region. And Tom, you said it best before, connectivity is important. We're understanding that the focus of this webinar is Rails to Trails and expanding on the Trails network. That's all very exciting for a lot of different reasons, whether environmental or public health or connectivity benefits. So trails are a great way to do that, but that's in reality, we live in New Jersey and there's some constraints and different types of roadblocks that you might hit while operating in New Jersey, whether it's spatial or political. So the active transportation network really needs to include both on and off road facilities if we're going to try to achieve that regional connectivity and make biking and walking more popular and safer as a means of transportation. So not just recreation and exercise, of course, those are great too. So that was a big part of the impetus for NJTPA to develop this active transportation plan. The goal is to establish a safe and functional regional network of pedestrian bicycle facilities and to help better connect people where they live to where they need to be. These active transportation facilities include sidewalks and crossings and bike lanes and trails, all those elements. A lot of work went into it. We had data analyses to identify communities that are suffering heavier burdens, disproportionate amounts of crashes, for example. We also had trip potential and demand analysis to determine the places in the region where people are more likely to bike and walk. And that's based on a mix of different factors. And then we looked to create a network that connects those places. So we also had public outreach as a big part of this, just to help inform where pedestrians and cyclists are experiencing problems. And we had a lot of stakeholders that provided expert input. We had a TAC made up of all different county, state, and advocacy experts around the state. So the result was, kind of what you see here as a primary output. We have a proposed conceptual regional active transportation network that addresses the gaps in the network that are existing. And it's just to give everyone a common framework to refer to when we're looking to create more active transportation facilities in the future. Next slide, please. So for Somerset County, what that means is this plan was recommending a network that connects trails with other important facilities, such as transit stations or downtown areas. And you can see in the map here that this is kind of centered on existing roadways. Some of these are regional roadways that are often like county or state roads, not always conducive for biking and walking. So for that reason, we also have a half-mile buffer that you can kind of see in red there, and that's just to insert some flexibility where planners can explore other routing options on local roads that are maybe a little bit less stressful and still achieve that regional connectivity we're looking for. In Somerset County, the DNR Canal Trail was the most regionally significant trail. And there were some others like the 6 Mile Run or Bedminster Hike and Bikeway. I think Tom mentioned that earlier. A lot of other unpaved trails. So this regional network would connect most of these locations, and especially you can see also it's connecting with the NJ Transit lines, the Raritan Valley and Gladstone Branch and all the stations. So those are to improve first and last mile connections in the more densely populated areas. Next slide, please. Yes, perfect, thank you. This is the NJTPA. We just recently created an online tool, the Active Transportation Plan Data Viewer. And this is just released, and we're just trying to help jurisdictions to further explore active transportation needs and to kind of select and prioritize their implementation efforts. So this map viewer has a lot of different layers that you can toggle on and off, includes all the data analysis that went into the plan. And it's just helping to visualize the many factors that guide the selection of future active transportation facilities. So maybe you're a county planner and you're working for Walt Lane and trying to advance the walk, bike, hike study a little bit further and make connections between existing trails to transit and connecting with local roads that are more suitable for walking and biking. This lets you overlay all those different layers and try to make meaningful connections. And you can get to it from this link here. It's a little bit of a clunky direct link to the Esri site, but you can get through it from the active transportation page on our website. Next slide, please. Oh, so this is just a zoomed in view, so you can kind of really take a closer look at local roads within that buffer area and really make meaningful connections and select your priorities. Next slide, please. The Complete Streets Technical Assistance Program is a competitive program at NJTPA. It assists municipalities with complete streets planning efforts, and I think it's currently in its 4th round. We work in partnership with Sustainable Jersey and Voorhees Transportation Center on this program, and you can from the assistance on bike planning network or conducting a walkable community audits at specific locations. Those are just a couple examples. Currently, the program's in midstream with several communities, and the next round for solicitation will be in December 2025. So you might keep that in mind as you're gearing up to advance any local complete streets initiatives that support trails. Next slide, please. Another new program and effort that we have going on at NJTPA. This is gaining a lot of popularity. We have a demonstration library, and this is for counties and municipalities to borrow materials to put together quick build solutions. And it really helps streamline the that timely process of going from planning phase to projects on the ground. So you can use this materials, very light, quick, cheap materials, and you can demonstrate the benefits of different kinds of safety improvements on the roadways. And at the same time, engage the public, let them see how the new designs work and offer feedback, put them on the ground long enough to evaluate. So where you see here with the bike lanes image, that's an example from a Complete Streets plan that we did with Keyport in Monmouth County. And it's just, very cheap materials, high visibility crossing for the Henry Hudson Trail. And all it used was paint and stencils and some plastic bollards. So this is a great resource, it's very popular. Next slide, please. Now, I just want to mention the corridor and sub-regional studies. These are always ongoing. Corridor studies help coordinate with planning partners. One example was the Morris Canal Greenway study, which has resulted in a continuous ongoing working group that monitors how different projects are advancing along that right-of-way across 7 counties. And the infograph here just further illustrates all the destinations and facilities that a complete trail can connect. And I'll also mention the sub-regional study very quickly. We heard about walk, bike, hike from Somerset County, and we also work with plenty other examples. Bike Newark was just completed in 2024, and Passaic County's walk and bike study was completed in 2022. So you can look for those annual solicitations on the website as well. Next slide, please. One thing I wanted to talk about, very important here, local safety action plans. This helps support bike and pedestrian safety as well. It's been a high priority in a number of counties that we're working with. We're working with 8 counties. Somerset County is one of them. And we're developing safety action plans so that we're identifying safety priorities and emphasis areas in each county that we're working with. And through that process, we work with a lot of local, municipal, multidisciplinary, diverse groups of planners and engineers and police and school officials, local officials and dignitaries, all sorts of people coming together to help prioritize safety on county and municipal roadways. And that helps set up for other implementation funding opportunities. Next slide, please. On the implementation side, the NJTPA also offers a few programs. Local safety program is probably one of the more prominent, and it's looking to, it makes a lot of improvements for pedestrian safety treatments, downtown areas, countdowns for signal heads, high visibility crossings, and bike lanes are some examples. In Somerset County, we did a project with Manville on Main Street, and that was a road diet with curb extensions and all kinds of pedestrian safety features. And that program is available. You can get some more information about it on the website. We help to facilitate transportation alternative set-asides and safe routes to school grants in partnership with the NJDOT. And that focuses on, the TA is focusing on non-traditional projects like off-road trails, and Safe Routes to School is trying to help make biking and walking to school safer and easier. Next slide, please. And then there's some statewide support that I thought would be worth mentioning here. The NJDOT is going to be updating its statewide bicycle pedestrian plan. And we also should mention NJDEP has a trails program and grants administered through its Green Acres program. And a couple of years ago, even released a trails layer that has all the statewide trails, or a great many of them at least. The data is continuing to evolve. And lastly, I'll just mention the NJ Bike and Pedestrian Resource Center. So you should look that up for other statewide types of grants and funding opportunities. Next slide. And that's the conclusion. I think we'll be moving on to questions. So I'll hand it back to Sarah.
Great, thank you, Keith. That was really great. All those summary of all the great resources that NJTPA has for people looking to create trails and connections in their communities. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. So I know that we're at the hour mark now. So if anybody has to drop off, that's fine. We are going to send the recording of the presentation to all those who registered afterwards. But if anyone has any questions, let me check the Q&A and see if there were any questions. Let me also check the chat. Thanks everyone for all your great comments in the chat. Oh, I do see some questions. Okay. So we have a question from Carrie Hazelton. Do others share my concern about unauthorized trail use by motorized vehicles, trucks, ATVs, and motorbikes? If we build it, they will come. How do we control this? It's a great question.
I can speak to that.
Oh, go ahead, Tom.
There's no absolute that will never happen again scenario, but by far, when you open in terms of a rail trail that's gone from a unmanaged situation where it's just an unused corridor to a managed and planned and monitored corridor, you really don't run into those problems. There are some, but the biggest plus is the users themselves. Most of the people who want to do some illegal use don't want other people around when they're doing it. What we're seeing is a lot of night use, for example, with some of the small motorcycles, ATV. They could be unclassified e-bikes, that can go 40 or more miles per hour. Seeing a little bit of that, but for on whole, it doesn't become a problem.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I'm looking for any other questions. Michael, Dan Miller said, great summary. Middlesex is looking forward to meeting up with many of those trails. We're looking forward to that too. I think all of our speakers did a great job on talking about both regional and wider, local to regional and wider resources, because being able to connect the whole state, is a great goal. Let me check the Q&A. Also, if anyone has, I don't see any other questions in the Q&A or the chat. If anyone else has questions, feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself. You can also ask questions that way. Yes, Michael. Do I have to unmute you? Let me see if I can allow Mike. Okay, I think you can unmute yourself, Michael, if you'd like to ask a question. I did allow you to unmute, but if it doesn't work, you can also type it in the chat. This is for Michael, who has his hand raised. Oh, I can see you have your camera on now. Oh, nope, that's not you. Yeah, I don't know why it's not letting you unmute. I did put that you're allowed to unmute yourself, Michael, but I guess you could put it in the chat. Oh no, I know you're saying something. Well, also, if you have a question and you're not able to type it, okay, yeah, that's the problem. Let me put my email in the chat. You can email it either now or after the webinar, and we'll make sure that that someone gets you your answer. Patrick also just asked a question for Tom Boccino. Did the Woodfern link from South Branch Greenway make the radar?
Okay, how to find the mic there. So the loop trail that we have down along the South Branch Greenway, that's actually right now the either beginning or end point of the cross county trail network that we're looking to do. And then another phase of the South Branch Greenway trail would be also connecting that further up the South Branch into outside of Somerset County and connecting up that way. But there's concepts being discussed, no definite plans at this point solidified, but it is part of the larger plan to do that.
I would just add to what Tom was saying. In both definitely in the preservation plan, we talked more generally, so we didn't pin ourselves to one alignment versus another. So we kind of talks about making these connections in those broader sense. So if like when we struggle, and Tom could add to this, is like we put a true alignment on there, then people then sometimes will hold out and not want to sell for open space purchases. So we try to, some of these greenway connections are a little bit more of the buffered area, so it's not pinned to one particular property or not. And so like we did also identify potential connections to the Lawrence Hopewell Trail system too through a walk, bike, hike study because we coordinated with Mercer. So we looked at a bunch of our surrounding counties, and even walk, bike, hike talks about connecting to the Patriots Path in Morris County. So we try to look at how those regional connections could potentially be made, but sometimes they're a little bit more of the amorphous squiggly line on the planners love putting on a map.
And I think just kind of to that point, as we've seen with the Rat River Greenway Bikeway, which is probably our largest connected trail, it all comes with how far we can go before we have to start acquiring more land. So really that's the first step, and that's kind of the largest hurdle, is getting the land secured that we need to extend these bikeways and these trails. So we continue to work on that, and as we get significant contiguous pieces of land together where we can extend a trail, we will do that. And again, that's kind of what we've been doing with the Raritan River Greenway Bikeway. You know, as sections come available for us to develop, we develop sections and try and find logical starting and stopping points for these until we can connect everything up. So we don't want to kind of create all these dead end trails. So we do wait until there's an opportunity to either create a trailhead or connect into another trail system.
Thank you, Tom and Walt. We have a question from David. The DNR Canal Trail is a good example of an unpaved path that has its own character and utility. At what point would you decide to pave it for more commuter usage?
I could speak to generally, although I'm not an expert on the DNR, but I'm sure there's some historic preservation issues with paving it for first. But also, you can have great commuter trails and facilities that are stone dust. It doesn't mean you have to have pavement, which with climate change, we're seeing a lot more heat coming off those. You know, on a 90-degree day, when I'm in New Jersey and I have my heat gun taking surface readings and go to 170 degrees or more, that's pretty good. That's not so bad for somebody going 15, 20 miles an hour on their bike because they're creating their own wind, but somebody who has mobility problems and is lower to the ground and their conveyance doesn't go anywhere near that fast, that heat, it really makes it uncomfortable. And we're seeing more and more asphalt trails that it doesn't say closed at the beginning of the trail, but at the heat of the day, it's closing because it's just too hot to use for walkers and other people. So you have to balance these things.
And I would just add on that, you know, both the preservation plan and walk, bike, hike talk about making greater connections to the DNR Canal Towpath. The county has been very vocal about advocating for improvements to the infrastructure of the DNR Canal State Park, since it serves 3 counties and serves, you know, several EJ communities along that path. So I think we were somewhat successful because the state is finally doing a master plan update, since the last master plan for the DNR Canal State Park was done like 30+ years ago. So I think Somerset County will continue to advocate for improvements to make the trail more usable, but also maybe some other facilities like maybe some bathrooms or better in repairing access points that are in disrepair or that are closed currently because of the bridge is decayed or whatever. But so it's just some of the things Somerset's doing to kind of take advantage of that great resource that's there, because it can be used for more of a commuting type of option than just the recreational amenity that it provides now.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to kind of add on to what Tom was saying. Again, back, you know, kind of back to the Raritan River Greenway and the towpath. You know, I don't think it's our first desire to necessarily create a trail that's paved. We are doing it mostly along the Raritan because we are in a floodplain. And to be honest, you know, anything other than asphalt or some sort of paving material will wash away with every flood. So it's more stable in certain areas, but I think if we have the ability to create trails that can be walked and biked without paving it, I think that would be something we prefer to do. But it depends on the circumstances. And you know, Tom is also right with the DNR Canal towpath. You have the historic, you know, the historic designation to deal with. You also have the environmental issues that it is within a floodplain. So to try and pave that length would probably be very difficult and probably not the most desirable. And it's also maintaining the character of the canal.
And I'll add, if I can, most trails, when they're surfaced with asphalt, really aren't considering the tree roots. And we're spending millions of dollars to repave trails that should have been done right in the first place. And if they're going to asphalt some aspects of a trail, some segments, they need to put root barriers in to control that, because a root the size of my finger can crack a trail. And someone who's on a skinny tire bike dislikes that much more than, say, they lose 0.5 miles per hour of rolling speed on their bike.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I'm adding some more chats that Michael emailed me, since he's not able to type into the chat. Which also brings me to Michael, his question. Michael asked, he's interested in learning more about connectivity between Middlesex and Somerset counties, especially from the New Brunswick area. So that kind of relates a little to what you were talking about before.
Yeah, luckily you have Mike Dannemiller on. I think he's still with us, the planner and long time, 30 plus years of a trail planner. Really great resource for everybody.
You don't have to say nice things about Mike, so it's okay. Yeah, we worked with Mike for a long time. Mike was actually on the consultant team that did the walk, bike, hike study. So we definitely have had active conversations with Middlesex County. So there's a couple things. So we did some other work funded by the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority that we looked at many years ago. We did an Eastern Avenue corridor study with Middlesex County that looked at other potential connections to the DNR Canal State towpath from Somerset County. But the idea is that we've actually had some initial conversations with Mercer and Middlesex County through another forum to talk about advocating for improvements to DNR Canal State Park. Tom Boccino is heading up a project where we just, we're working with Middlesex County. We just bought a piece of property that's on the border between Middlesex Borough and Bound Brook to create a pocket park. So I'll let Tom talk about that exciting project. But I think our circulation plan also kind of just talked briefly about making some of these broader connections. So I know there's also a study going on in Eastern Avenue, safety study that's being funded by the NJTPA as well. So I think all those types of things will come out during that outreach process. But I do want to say the county's kind of looked at this for many years, and sometimes it just takes a while to get the projects moving and off the ground. But those concepts of making these better connections is definitely something we've been looking to do for many years. And our goal is putting it in these NJTPA funded studies will allow us or our planning partners to go for grants to implement that in the future. So Tom Boccino, if you want to say anything about G&P and all that, just the idea that it would make connections.
Sure. Well, it's a very small piece of property that's actually mostly in Middlesex Borough, but also in Bound Brook. Currently, well, the site of a former warehouse, but the site is unique in that it contains what we call the old Stone Arch Bridge, which was the site of the Battle of Bound Brook, which is actually buried under the parking lot, partially exposed. But So it was a unique opportunity, to save a historic resource and interpret and hopefully restore it to a certain point. But it's also creating an opportunity for partnerships with Middlesex Borough, Middlesex County, Bound Brook Borough, and Somerset County, all to kind of create the vision for that site. And although it will, based on its location, because it's surrounded pretty much either by water bodies or railroads, it's kind of a spot in and of itself, even though it is technically part of our larger Raritan River Greenway initiative. Like Walt said, it will really just be kind of a pocket park to help interpret the bridge, the site, the area. But it's also a location too that's just up the bank from a canoe and kayak launch that Bound Brook Borough worked with the water company to establish. So there are some connections there. They may not be quite as obvious or as easy to attain, but we are still trying to make those connections and hopefully be able to find a connection into this site along the Raritan, maybe someday through the former American Cyanamid site along the river, which is, which there's talks going on a regular basis concerning that too. So, it may be a standalone park, but maybe someday in the future we can actually create some more physical connections to it through the Greenway.
And I would just add, we, the county, not all counties work together as well as we do with our partners and so Mercer County was heavily involved in part of our walk bike hike study. Middlesex County was. So there's a lot of coordination going on because we have really good partners and relationships with our surrounding community. So I know Mike and I, Mike Danamiller from Middlesex, we talk a lot about how we can kind of partner and move some of these things forward. So which sets us apart from, I think, other places in New Jersey.
Awesome. It's great. Paul asked, I think this is a question for Tom Boccino because it's specific to Somerset County. But he asked, Franklin Township is working with the county to improve the connection to the Delaware towpath. They need an area alongside a connector road so pedestrians and bikers can get there safely. Currently, pedestrians and bikers must walk or ride on Weston Canal Road, and the plan is to put a pedestrian walkway alongside 258 feet of roadway alongside the road. Township will handle piping and paving. DRCC wants a $30,000 engineering study fee. So Paul's asking if there are grants available for the engineering plan.
The county currently has a recreation grant program. The future of it is still uncertain as far as whether we're going to be continuing the program. So I guess the answer is kind of yes and no. But also Franklin Township has actually received a grant through that program. So we're not currently issuing or considering second grants for that. So for the time being, it's still a program, but for the time being, it's kind of in limbo. So I would say stay tuned to see if there's any changes made to that program. We are also looking at possibly providing some grants for trails in the future as well, which this may fit into. But that's a discussion we're having right now, but nothing concrete at this point.
Thank you, Tom. And Paul, yeah, I would recommend, looking for grants in places like Sustainable Jersey as well. I know that this isn't specific for your engineering study, but applying to things like Complete Streets Technical Assistance can help with other types of plans and things like that. So there's a lot of resources out there. Hopefully you can find one that fits. Is there any other questions? Again, feel free to either unmute yourself or put it in the chat. If there's no other questions, thank you everyone for staying on to the call, even though we ran a little bit over. And thank you again to all of our speakers for your amazing presentations. Like I said, there are so many amazing resources out there for people looking to build and maintain trails and connectivity within our state and region. So thank you to all our speakers for sharing and highlighting a lot of those great resources. In the next coming days, I'll be sending out copies of the slides and a recording so you all have them and you can reach out to us anytime. Thank you,
Thanks for the
everyone.
opportunity to be part of the panel.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.